Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of From the Studio. I'm your host, Corey Riggs, welcoming you inside our MC22 studio and happy to be with all of you once again. On this week's episode, we'll spend most of our time on the topic of high school sports. We have two guests from two different parts of the state to weigh in on what they expect the fall sports season will look like. The first is my good friend Jim Powers. He is the coordinator of athletics communications at Maryville University in St. Louis. But for most of his career before that, he's been the voice of countless high school sporting events and championships across the state. Then we'll take a deeper dive into some of the top football players right here in Southwest Missouri and what the Ozarks fall sports landscape will look like with the one and only Wyatt Wheeler, who for the past 4+ years has been covering sports in and around Springfield for the News-Leader. Remember, if you like our show, please let us know on social media. We're open to suggestions on topics to tackle or guests to have on. You can find us on Twitter at FromTheStudio22. We'd love to hear from you. Stay tuned. Jim Powers from St. Louis joins us from the studio after this. Welcome back to From the Studio on MC22, everybody. Our first guest is a longtime friend of mine from St. Louis and has been my broadcast partner on more state championship basketball and football games than either one of us probably care to remember. He is considered by a number of outlets to be one of the experts in high school sports in the St. Louis area, and it is a pleasure to have him on the show now. He is Jim Powers. Jimmy, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Was hoping to be a little bit busier at this time, but with the current state of affairs, it's it's kind of more watching to see what everybody's going to be doing instead of watching kids get ready to play football and volleyball and soccer here over the next couple of weeks. But everything's good, everybody's healthy, and it's going to be an interesting couple months here, I think, with all the fall sports.
Well, I wanted to get an idea from you on the differences between, say, St. Louis County and Greene County. Down here in Greene County and Springfield, we've had a sum total of about 2,000 positive COVID cases and only about 17 or 18 deaths. Now, in St. Louis County, that number is well over 16,000 cases, over 700 deaths. What is the attitude of parents and sports fans like in St. Louis County? I know everybody down here is just ready to play ball. Is it the same up there?
They're going crazy. I mean, and that's putting it lightly. These kids got the spring taken away from them. A lot of them had their summers taken away from them. So, everybody was hoping that there would be an opportunity to get fall sports going on time. But that's just not going to happen in St. Louis County. We had a spike probably towards the, middle of July, and it's finally starting to level out a little bit. But when that spike took place, they basically put all the youth sports back to what they were calling phase 1, which is basically you can't do anything. You could have 10 kids and you can't have equipment and different things along those lines. But the pulse right now is the kids want to play, the parents want the kids to play. The biggest thing, though, is we got to keep everybody safe. And we've got to make sure that these kids are able to do the things that they want to do in a safe manner. I know the coaches have been meeting. I know the ADs have been meeting to ensure that there is going to be safe, protocols put into place. But right now in St. Louis County, a lot of schools are looking at either going to the spring or going with a schedule that they're not going to start playing actual games until October 2nd. So it's going to be an interesting scenario, but I know everybody's ready to go. The question is going to be, when is the county going to go ahead and green light everybody to start doing things that they want to do?
Well, you bring up the alternate schedules, the spring schedules. The Missouri State High School Activities Association has done everything they can do to empower the local districts, the local counties, and the local schools to find a way to play in the safest manner possible. And whether that's playing in the fall without fans and restrictions or playing in the spring when we hope there are less restrictions, they're just trying to give the school districts all the tools that they need to compete at some point in time this year. But you and I both know the insanity that surrounds fans of sports when you start hearing that there might be a spring football season and you could have multiple football championships in the same year. How do you think all of that shakes out? Because I know there's not really anybody in Southwest Missouri that's talking about playing in the spring, but there are schools in other parts of the state that are, and you might have maybe the same thing that we've seen for the last couple of years in softball with a fall champion and a spring champion?
Yeah, absolutely. I think right now, from hearing from a lot of the school districts, there's going to be around maybe 12 to 13 districts in the St. Louis area that are going to go to that spring, that spring schedule. There's some schools in Kansas City that are seriously considering going to that. But now here's the other thing to remember, some schools may get into this thing starting next week and have a couple outbreaks, and then they're going to have to shut the season down. So they'll be able to then, make that shift into the spring as well. I think Michigan did a great job. I think they're giving the kids and the schools every opportunity to get out there and do the things that they love to do, and that's play sports. And I think sports is very, very important. I didn't like the Illinois, plan, because I think the spring sports kids got absolutely hosed.
Yeah.
That whole deal.
They'd already lost enough last year.
Yeah, they lost their whole year last year, and literally, in all essence, they lost half of their season this year already because of how they did their stuff. So I'm glad Missouri did not go that direction. I think the plan that they have is a good plan. There's going to be multiple football champions. You're going to have a fall football champion, and then you're going to have a spring football champion. Same thing with baseball. You're going to have you're going to have two champions there. So, but I think with the uncertain times that we're in right now and being flexible and being able to do things, I think they did the best thing that they possibly could. Once again, to give everybody the opportunity. Now, not everybody's going to be happy. This as well as I do. There's going to be, fan limits. I know in St. Charles County and down in Jefferson County, they're starting to roll out what their expectations are going to be. And you're probably talking 250 people per team. That's going to be a lot in a football stadium on a Friday night. And that's going to be the trade-off. If we want our kids to play, then we're going to have to give up something. And the giving up of something is you're not going to see the packed houses on a Friday night for football games. And I think you have to go that direction to keep everybody safe, to keep everybody, socially distanced and wearing masks and different things along those lines. So I think the protocols that are being put out there right now are very good. I think they're doing a terrific job. They're well thought through. They're well, they've done it the right way. And so they're setting themselves up to be successful with it. But no, I think Mish has done a terrific job with this, and they're in a no-win situation. That
they always are.
Yeah, I mean, they're in an absolute no-win situation, and putting the power with the schools, I think, is a very good idea, because then, if the parents want to kick and scream, they can kick and scream to their local school districts. They don't have to go to Columbia and start, beating down Mish's doors.
Yeah. Now, Jim, you wear a lot of hats in St. Louis. A lot of people know you from your time with the high school sports caravan, working with Misha, but you've also been the voice of the Maryville Saints since 2016. You've been in their athletic communications office. How do you contrast and compare the decisions and the plans that are having to be made on the high school level with what you're seeing at the college level with like a membership like the Great Lakes Valley Conference that Maryville's a member of?
Well, you're seeing a lot of, the NCAA has come out with all, with a heavy document with, okay, here are your return to play guidelines. Testing is the big thing. And that's across the board in the NCAA from Division I all the way down to Division III. And so, there's a lot more layers, so to say, with the NCAA than there would be with the high school side. But I think it's the same protocols. I mean, we've got our kids moving in this weekend. It's going to be a hybrid schedule at Maryville. We're going to have, kids, some students on the ground, and some of them are going to be going virtually and different things along those lines. But, the big thing is, I think we were very intentional, and our leadership and Dr. Mark Lombardi is unbelievable. And the staff that he has that put everything together, they worked countless hours to make sure that not only the students were safe, but also the staff and the faculty was safe. And I think you're seeing that across the board with all the universities and, with all the protocols and different things along those lines. And we're kind of the benchmark for what a lot of the high schools are doing. They're seeing what the collegiate side's doing. Mm-hmm. And now, obviously, high schools can't test. I mean, that number is just entirely way too high for high schools to have to test on a weekly basis, or even to do one round of testing, to be, perfectly honest. But it's kind of interesting to see how the high schools are kind of, following along what the colleges are doing. And obviously the colleges are following along with what the high schools are doing as well. And, it's really interesting to see how everybody's kind of working in lockstep together. Once again, I think the bottom line is we got to keep our kids safe. We got to keep these kids safe. We got to make sure that we don't have any major outbreaks. I've been beating the drum about wearing masks. I mean, we have to wear masks when we're on campus, unless we're in our offices all by ourselves, and then we can take the masks off. But if we're just walking to the water fountain, we've got to have our masks on. And I know some of the schools, the high schools that are having kids in the building on the ground, they're basically mandating a lot of the same things. So I think a lot of the stuff is pretty equal. So to say, from the NCAA side coming down to the high school side. I think the big difference is, we pulled the plug and we're just moving everything to the spring, no questions asked, basically. And I think that was a great decision. I think it gives our student athletes at Maryville an opportunity to get in, get acclimated, and not have to worry about all the other things that are going to be going on around them. It'll let them have an opportunity to take a deep breath. And then, hopefully we're able to get the green light and, have a lot of events in the spring, so to say.
You're going to be busy, my man. I know I'm not going to get to see you much in the spring, but while you're keeping all those student athletes safe, you stay safe as well. And hopefully you and I can get together face to face instead of this Zoom thing here before too long, okay?
Yeah, I'm getting tired of Zoom. I'm getting tired of FaceTime. It'll be good to finally see some people that I haven't had a chance to see in the last 5-6 months in person. But yeah, we're all good, and you guys stay safe down there, and I'll be following along with a lot of the stuff you guys are doing, because you're starting next week and we're not, so to say. So I'll be following a lot of Springfield stuff.
We will have it for you, man. Jim Powers from St. Louis, everybody. Jimmy, thank you for coming on with us.
No problem, buddy. Anytime.
All right. We will be back with more from the studio here in just a minute.
Hi, I'm Judy Ballou, your host for Dishing It Up. I invite you to join me every week as we watch some of the Ozarks' favorite chefs come into the demonstration kitchen at Metro Appliances and More and prepare some of their favorite dishes.
This is fun for TV. You do sweet and savory together all the time. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Watch Dishing It Up on channel 722 in high definition.
From the Studio continues now here on MC22 with the self-proclaimed best-looking sports reporter at the Springfield News-Leader. If you don't believe me, you can just check out his Twitter. He is Wyatt Wheeler, and he joins us now. Wyatt, how are you doing, man?
Or they could just take a look at me. What are we talking about here, Corey?
Well, this isn't a radio interview. There's no hiding from this now with Zoom and everything. So, well, man, I tell you what, there is a lot of excitement right now around the start of fall sports. Everything, I think people have been in better spirits seeing the NBA come back, the NHL come back, Major League Baseball come back, even with some of the struggles they've had. You look at the landscape of high school sports as we get ready to open up the fall. A week from now, high school football is going to kick off on August 28th. With everything that you've seen go on at the pro level, at the college level, what sort of chance do you give the high schools in Southwest Missouri and across the state of starting and finishing the fall sports seasons?
It's a really interesting one because, I mean, these high schools aren't testing like those big schools or like the colleges. They can't afford to do that. They can't do it often like the NBA can do it every day. But a high school in Southwest Missouri just isn't able to do that. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of moving pieces, just whether it's shutting down programs for a few weeks, deciding to move to a different part of the year to have their seasons. So it's really interesting, but I think that Misha can at least do some kind of championship for the survivors that are kind of able to go on and do it the entire year. I could see them doing that. And I mean, it's just it's such a moving thing that we've kind of come accustomed to, that we think one thing one day and the next we're completely opposite. So it's hard to put a percentage on that right now. I feel like we're looking pretty good at going into a season, but that could all change tomorrow. It's just the way this whole thing has been ever since everything shut down.
Well, even at the time that we're taping this interview for the show, we've had a couple of different areas, schools run into coronavirus-related problems. Had the program over at Central, as far as volleyball goes, getting shut down for a couple of weeks because of some problems there. And then you've got an area high school program that's already pushing back the start of their season until the end of the month, a couple of days after the opening night of the football season.
Yeah, and that's another thing, just adjusting on the fly and doing that contact tracing. When you look at something like Central volleyball, I just kind of remember back to when I was in high school football, how much I was spending time around all the guys and everything. And it was, when I think of contact tracing, I just kind of find it hard to believe that not everybody's going to be around each other if one guy gets it. But I mean, it seems like there was a Kickapoo football player who was just solo, and they were able to contact trace that out. So it seems like there's some things that are going on to where they're doing the right things, practicing the right social distancing measures and masks and everything, just to make it work. But you're going to see some programs shut down and have to push things off a week or cancel some games. So it's there's a lot of it's just moving all the time. I think it's just something we're going to have to get used to with high school sports here.
Yep, something that we haven't really had to deal with before, but it is part of the new normal that is 2020. Let's talk about something more fun. You just wrote a great article about some of the top football players in Southwest Missouri to watch. What are a couple of the names that high school football fans need to have on their radar going into this season?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to watching some Carthage. Carthage, state champions, just kind of loaded top to bottom. The offensive line's got some big guys. You look at a guy like Aiden Logan, he's 6'5", 270 pounds, is committed to Arkansas State. You got Patrick Carlton, that quarterback, returning after being the offensive player of the year. So that's a really good team to watch. I know you're a Webb City guy and you really like your Cardinals, but they'll be in contention for another state title. They got a talented running back there in Devin Weathers, who's committed to Kansas State. They got a tight end who's being recruited a lot in the area. So that's who's also committed to Arkansas State. So, there's some good guys down there. I really like Jamin Smith. I was able to watch a little bit of film on him. The Buffalo kid. He's a little bigger than you think, and he puts up a lot of he puts up a lot of passing stats, and he gets a lot done on the ground. So I mean, he kind of looks like a quarterback. He was our player of the year a couple of years ago on our vote. I think a guy like Caden Burks over at Parkview can be a breakout guy. Got a bigger body, started as a sophomore, and can make that jump into a junior year. And they had a pretty good team the year before that, and they were good, and they didn't need him back when he was a freshman. But I mean, just kind of thrown in there as a sophomore with kind of a rebuilding team, could probably get some improve around him as well. CJ Anoy, I think that's how you say it.
It's close. It's Anawahi, because I've called I've called his brother's games at Evangel.
When you put apostrophes in there, I don't know. You're right. I don't read. I don't talk. I'm not on these very often. But I mean, he's a big defensive lineman. That he's going to be a good one. He could be one of the better defensive linemen in the state. Glendale's always going to have their big stats. You look at just the air raid and passing and everything. Jack Klinkenbeard's going to be a receiver. Whoever that next Glendale quarterback's going to be, Klinkenbeard's a good one that he can rely on. Good catching the ball and running after the catch. Does a lot in the screen game as well as beating corners down the field. Stephen Ward's a kid that I like. Nick's a linebacker, just seems to be all over the field. Those are just a few of them. I mean, it's just kind of digging in a little bit, watching some stuff. It's a pretty talented area this year. Some good names, some good stars for a lot of these different teams in the area, just to be able to make it kind of have a fun time going out on a Friday night and watching them. It seems to be it's getting a little better than what it's been in the past, in my opinion.
Yep, football in Southwest Missouri continues to prove year after year, and three great teams in Joplin, Carthage, and Webb City all making it to the championships last year, and hopefully even more this year if we can get to that point in the season. It has been chronicled for a long time. For the last 2, 3, 4 years, you've been kind of a one-man band there at the News-Leader, trying to cover everything related to college sports in this town, high school sports in this town. But tell me a little bit how things are going to change now. You've been teasing on Twitter that there are going to be some maybe interns coming on to help you and expand your high school coverage this fall.
Yeah, really happy to get that going. So just a little bit of teaching and stuff is always something that I've kind of been a little. I was the editor-in-chief, sports editor at the school paper at Missouri State Standard, and I kind of missed having teammates and stuff to kind of have to work with. And I remember sitting there at a JQH arena with a couple of the student reporters, and they're like, "Wyatt, we would want to work with you and try to get some stuff if you had like internships and stuff." So it kind of dawned on me to just kind of work on something to get something for the high school level, because I think that's something we've really been missing. I do a lot of Missouri State because that's one of the bigger things. That's probably the biggest thing here in town as far as athletics, but it's really hard to cover a couple dozen high schools. Sure. So we've started. So we just had our first meeting this week, to where we have two student reporters from Missouri State, and they're going to be working with me weekly. We're going to plan. We're going to come up with a whole bunch of different stories. It's not going to be typical game stories like you might be used to seeing, but I think what separates us from every other media outlet is just good storytelling. We can do it in different ways, and we're able to be creative. And I just haven't been able to do that by myself when only covering one game, when there's when there's a bunch going on in the region. And something like this, with more bodies, more eyes going to different games, we're going to be able to come back and be able to present different stories, just give people different ways of reading things and getting to know these kids. because that's really what it's all about with high school stuff. I know a lot of people want to. I know there's some things that want to make it about the coaches and what years they're going into, but I think it's all about the kids. Yeah. I think it's their time to where you can make them feel like big time stars. And not a lot of them are going to go on to play at like a Missouri State or one of these big colleges, but whatever they do on a Friday night is going to be something fun, and it's going to be something they have forever. And I think just documenting little stories about the kids really what can separate us, and good storytelling, and really bring more of a spotlight on that stuff. And I can't be more excited to have a few teammates going into this year, and Amanda Sullivan and Stephen Terrell from the Standard to help out. And we're going to require them to be involved in their school papers, just kind of push a little more to get people more involved there. I'm hoping to work with Drury in the future to get more kids from there. Mm-hmm. It's just a good thing. It helps me a lot, and it's going to go towards their college credits. And I know, me being a college professor in this case is probably not the best idea. But it's something that's going to help them a lot, and I'm excited for that.
Don't sell yourself short. They can learn a lot from you, and we look forward to seeing the expanded coverage. You can follow him at Wyatt Wheeler _NL for everything he does and everything that the two new interns are going to bring to the Friday night and the prep high school scene. Wyatt, man, we'll do this again real soon. Thanks, man.
Appreciate you, Corey, anytime.
All right, Wyatt Wheeler, everybody. We'll come back and wrap up from the studio here in just a minute. That'll about do it for this episode of From the Studio. Remember, you can follow this show on Twitter at FromTheStudio22, or you can follow me at Corey Riggs TV. If you've got an idea for a topic or a guest, please send it our way. Before we go, it's safe to say that we all have missed out on a lot from the world of sports this past spring and summer due to the pandemic. Here at MC22, we're going to try and make up for lost time. We are about to enter our 40th season of covering high school football in Southwest Missouri, and that is something that a lot of us are very proud of. We will have a game of the week in football as we always do, but we're adding more games to our coverage, expanding what we will see from both boys soccer and girls volleyball. On top of that, we're going to work with the great team at Evangel University to bring you coverage of some of their home football and volleyball games as well. So that should make for a very busy fall. And after what we've all been through, as far as I'm concerned, I'm looking forward to being as busy as I can be. Our final thank yous for this show go out to our guests, Jim Powers from Maryville University in St. Louis and Wyatt Wheeler from the Springfield News-Leader. And as always, thanks to all of you for watching. Until next time, for our MC22 crew, I'm Corey Riggs saying so long from the studio.